Hello, fellow risk takers, and welcome to my worst investment ever. Stories of loss to keep you winning. In our community, we know that to win in investing, you must take risk, but to win big, you've got to reduce it. This episode is sponsored by A Stot's Academy, which offers online courses to help investors, aspiring professionals, business leaders, and even beginners to improve the finances of their lives and their businesses. Go to myworstinvestmentever.com right now to claim your discount on the course that excites you the most. Fellow risk takers, this is your worst podcast host, Andrew Stotts, and I'm here with featured guest Kevin Maloney. Kevin, are you ready to rock?
Yes, I am, Andrew.
Let's do it. Well, Kevin is a serial entrepreneur with 20 plus years of experience in business development, marketing, operations, and finance, with early to mid stage consumer media, technology, and real estate companies. Get this, ladies and gentlemen, he has led more than 1,000 early mid stage investor presentations, conducted 100 and more corporate and institutional roadshows, and raised more than $90 million in capital for a dozen early stage companies. Kevin, take a minute and fill in further tidbits about your life.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I grew up in Southern California. So, parents were at Caltech. Mom was a administrator at Caltech for 23, 24 years. My dad got his PhD in physics from Caltech. And I grew up washing a lot of cars of a lot of scientists growing up, and was fortunate enough to be around a lot of science and always had a passion for solving problems as it relates to science. So I feel super fortunate. Youngest of four. I have two kids. I live in California, and something interesting you wouldn't read from my bio. I had my team. We had an incredible fabrication facility, and we built an amazing shark cage, and that was taken down to Guadalupe Island in Mexico. And over a 2-year period, my friend let us take his boat 2 different trips. And we were able to get in the water and dive with the sharks in the cage that my guys built. So kind of a fun, there's a neat YouTube video out there. It's a little shaky, but there's a great YouTube video out there on
and that's trust.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't mind a little bit of risk out there, but today we'll talk about how to mitigating risk.
Exactly. Well, one of my favorite professors out of the Caltech system was, of course, Richard Feynman, and who originally, I believe, was at Cornell, where my father studied his education in science. But just love the reputation of what they've done over the years, Caltech and all that. So fantastic.
Feynman was incredible, well liked by many. An amazing guy, gone way too soon. I think he had throat cancer or something like that. Incredible scientist.
For those people that haven't, tapped into the wisdom of Richard Feynman, just go on the internet and search for Richard Feynman, and what you'll find is some of his videos and videos of him speaking. But the thing about Feynman that was so great as a teacher, and I took a lot from what I observed when I watched videos and listened to tapes of him talking and read his books, is that what he did in teaching, I think, was so cool, and I try to emulate it in my teaching, is the idea of, instead of trying to explain something very complex, he tried to think of a way, how could I explain this in like the most simplest way of, like, imagine, it would make something very complex in physics seem so simple, where even a simple guy like me would just listen and go, God, I'm really understanding this. And he knew that he would lose people as he went deeper and deeper into it, but he made science much more accessible to so many people. And so I think that's a lesson that I learned from him, and I would highly recommend for listeners that haven't heard about him to search. And now maybe what I'll do is, in the show notes, I'll put a little link to his some of his work.
Yeah, he's got a couple of great books, and super engaging, and just a really fun and very sociable guy, not the typical introvert. Just an amazing person, did a lot of things for the scientific community.
I'm curious, before we get into the question, what I was curious about is that, you've done a lot about raising money for startups and companies in mid-stage and all of that. And I know there's a lot of listeners out there that are either in startups, thinking about startups or growing their business to be bigger, and they're looking at the choices about raising capital and all of that. I'm just curious, like, how would you summarize some of the core lessons that you learned from your experience?
It, raising capital is difficult. I don't like it. I don't think I'm good at it. But it's a necessary evil. And like I tell my kids that are 7 and 9 now, learn how to be great listeners and great public speakers, and learn how to do whatever it is you do. Learn how to include, if it's natural and authentic, a lot of passion. So find something that excites you. I don't care if it's free, like music, sunset, or artwork. Find something that's free that you're passionate about. And when you speak about it, speak with absolute conviction and passion, because that does resonate with investors and they appreciate that. Also, there's many other things. Be transparent, understand your strengths and weaknesses, and figure out what the customer needs and how you're differentiating your solution and how you make money, of course. But at the end of the day, it's passion and conviction and really having a good network of people that believe in you and want to help you achieve your vision. And so I think that passion really resonates. So know your stuff, right?
Mm,
That's, I kind of connected with some scientists that weren't great speakers, had great ideas, and I became sort of the spokesperson for the science people. And I got really enthralled with the science and super engaged in it, and became very passionate and obviously quite knowledgeable over the years during my journey. But investors want to know that you're open, honest, ethical, and coachable, and you are absolutely convicted to get this thing done, whatever it takes.
yeah, it's a great point. As I teach in one of my courses about how to become a great presenter and increase your influence, is that um, numbers do not convey emotion. And the mistake a lot of people do is, and they go to finance people and they try to present something to them, they try to present a lot of numbers. But numbers are not going to hook someone into a story. And ultimately, you want to tell your audience, particularly investors, that I have a special opportunity here. I'm going on a journey of a lifetime to change the world with what I'm doing. And today is your chance to join in that. And
Right.
I'm telling you, if we leave this event today and you don't join in, trust me, tomorrow I've got other people I'm presenting to get in this journey, and your spot's going to be gone. So today's the day to make your decision of whether you want to go on that journey with me. And I think that passion and that journey and all that is what people really want to buy into. That's what any investor wants to be able to say, I'm behind this guy and the mission and the passion that he's got.
I believe it's spot on. I think having a good, well thought out, and defensible Excel financial model shows discipline. And I think you don't have to be an expert in Excel, but you should have someone on your team you can partner with to deliver a defensible model that is well thought out. But I agree, the engagement of the customer, um, the time you engage that customer, having good advisors, coaches, mentors around you, and really getting customer feedback, and then iterating quickly with passion to deliver that clear, concise, compelling value proposition is really key. And we can talk more about that in a bit, but I
Amen.
agree. It's really passion about the project and the potential to deliver value, massive value, and to change the world. I mean, what else are we doing?
Beautiful.
That's why we get out of bed.
And that's the beauty of business. We are trying to change the world with our products and services. So now it's time to share your worst investment ever. And since no one goes into their worst investment thinking it will be, tell us a bit about the circumstances leading up to it, and then tell us your story.
Again, Andrew, thanks for having me. And so my story is really a journey that ironically starts at about age 29, before I was married, before I had kids. And that journey went to age 44. So my journey to a massive failure in this particular investment transpired over a decade and a half. So clearly there was enough milestones being hit at some point along the way where a normal person would be thinking, we've got a really good chance here. And so that's the irony, is that, I probably wouldn't take the same risk again today, married with kids and a few things like that. But I encourage everybody in their 20s and 30s and 40s, which I believe is still young, to take those risks and engage with experts. And I'm talking about the super risky things. In your 50s and 60s, absolutely continue to take the risks. But I think we get smarter with time and age, and we're just better at vetting some of these opportunities. Continue to take the risk, but I think we just get more knowledgeable along the way. If you fail enough times, I think eventually you get more smarter. Hopefully we do, so we don't repeat those mistakes. But again, my journey started at age 29. I just finished, was about to finish graduate school. I thought I knew enough to really get on my own and start something exciting. I was fortunate enough to connect with some scientists that were working on a process to produce nanomaterials, very small metallic powders at the nanoscale, about 1,000 times smaller than the diameter of a human hair. And those materials were basically converting the periodic table to something larger, like micron size, like something the size of grains of sand or salt, to something nanoscale, literally smaller than a human hair, about 1,000 times smaller. So really small stuff. And if you take iron, copper, silver, nickel, palladium, cobalt, zinc in grains of sand or salt size and convert them to something smaller, it's still the same metal, but they act completely different. These things are antimicrobial, they're magnetic, they are conductive, they are catalytic, meaning they'll facilitate a catalytic reaction. So you can imagine the myriad of things you could use these materials in. If you could truly take the periodic table and convert the center right of the periodic table to something smaller and more active, magnetic, conductive, catalytic, or antimicrobial, you could focus on large billion-dollar applications and accelerate efficiencies and cut cost. And so I was, of course, enamored with the potential of this process. And I was engaged with the scientist. I ended up getting a large percentage of the company. I raised the first $100,000. I didn't think we'd ever need another dime. $100,000 was a lot of money, and still is. And I said, look, if we can build this reactor, this vacuum chamber that's under high vacuum and just a few millitors of vacuum, suction, and we can get the right temperature, we can melt these materials. Every metal has a melting point and vapor point. And if you can liquefy these metals and cool them and collect them at the nanoscale, you can do incredible things. And that's all very real, very patented, and very public information. And that all actually worked. We were successful at getting patents issued. We did build the first reactor. The materials, the large materials, micron size, grains of sand or salt, went into the reactor, and very small, fine, black, velvety powder came out. Incredible. And I needed to see this with my own eyes before I would put my name really on it in a big way. And we were making fingernailfuls a day, probably the most in the world at the time. This is back in 2002, 2003 timeframe. And I was really excited. We actually had money left over. We had spent $85,000 on the reactor. Material came out. It was truly nanoscale. I invited people to come in to see the reactor in the back of my brother's garage. And we were really hitting some great milestones. We then went out and ended up raising a lot more capital. My biggest investment loss, it doesn't equal $100,000. It ended up being about a $35 million total investment in this company. And it transpired over the next 15 years. Early on, there was a very hot window of everything nanotechnology. That was, 2003 to about 2007 timeframe. And I ended up running into these guys, these scientists, in 2002. We sort of formally launched in 2003 timeframe. We raised the first amount of capital. We built the reactor. We proved the concept. We filed patents. We engaged with a few large potential partners and potential early customers, like
This is going to the moon.
yeah, like Northrop
Perfect
Grumman.
timing.
It was incredible, and you know, and I had surrounded myself with incredible mentors. Bill Collins, the former president of Tech Coast Angels, the largest angel investment network group in the U.S. George Olah, the Nobel Prize winner from USC, chemistry, 96, I believe, 94, 96, Nobel laureate, joined our advisory team. Fez Kayem, Caltech microbiologist, has taken two companies public, both billion-dollar market caps. Genmark and Hibrix, both public and out there, a founder or advisor. Dr. Mark Oroff, Caltech, high energy physicist who studied with Gell-Mann as his advisor on his PhD program. My bosses at PIMCO, one of the largest investment firms now in the country, where I started off in finance. These guys backed me with capital and became advisors. They were MBAs and CFAs from the top schools like Wharton and Berkeley. So I didn't have to be the smartest guy in the room. And I knew that. And I was very open and transparent about it. Yes, I was probably the youngest and most connected and ambitious in the room, but I didn't have to be the smartest because I had so many brilliant people around me. And I figured if I was just open and coachable and asked a lot of questions, we'd measure 5 times, cut once, and I had plenty of experts to guide me. And so we would hit milestones along the way. In 2007 timeframe, we put out an article. I ran into a marketing company and they said, we're going to promote you. And I said, well, you don't need to promote me. I don't need to be on the cover of anything. I facetiously joked, I want to be Forbes number 401, you know, the guy you don't read about, right? So not everyone out there is asking for money. I could just donate anonymously. And so, you know, I said, but I don't need to be on the front cover of anything. What we need is our technology noticed in trade publications and technical journals where engineers would be reading saying, wow, if I can get my hands on this material, catalytic, conductive, antimicrobial, or magnetic, imagine the things I can do. And he was successful at getting us a group called KCOM here in California, a guy named Sinan Kanatsas, an ambitious Turkish immigrant, his family from Turkey. He did a great job, and Energizer, a group, a consultant from Energizer called and said, if you can do half of what you guys say you can, I want to test and evaluate this material. Send it to me and I'll evaluate it in my laboratory. And if it works, if it shows promise, if it's really catalytic and more active, we can build a battery electrode, one of the sort of the flat active layer of the battery, the engine inside for zinc air, metal air batteries. We can get that in front of Energizer. And I said, oh, that would be incredible. So I hired this individual, did a great job for us, took him almost 2 years, and developed an award-winning cathode, an active layer inside the battery. These are metal air batteries, the little button cells for hearing aids. You pull the seal back, air flows in, it starts to oxidize, and these batteries generate stable power running from air, right? So you're just slowly oxidizing zinc, which then turns into zinc oxide. And if you neutralize that, you literally can use zinc oxide for sunscreen. So we were all about clean tech, green and clean energy. It's 2006, 2007 timeframe. Nano's going through the moon on stories. A lot of overfunded, overhyped companies that were raising, no joke, hundreds of millions of dollars. And I thought, what's wrong with us? Why was I only able to raise a few $1,000,000? We actually had real scientists, real advisors, real patents and people and products, and a little bit of R&D revenue. We were engaged with customers that wanted this stuff. I got a couple things very wrong along the way. I misjudged the level of how conservative the chemical industry is. Very conservative. Anything in the chemical industry typically takes 8 to 15 years to bring to market. Even if it's real and repeatable and third-party validated, it takes 8 to 15 years to bring a new product to market in the chemical industry. I got that very wrong. I thought if we build it, of course, they will come. And if the performance is good enough and repeatable and validated by third-party experts, how can you dispute it? Who's not going to commercialize this technology if it's truly better, faster, cheaper, or more efficient, or gives you more power, more energy? And even if you check all those boxes, I got that very wrong. I also misjudged the time it takes. The least predictable part of the entire cycle to develop a product is the time it takes for your customers to bring their products to market when they depend on you. So if you're just the Intel chip inside the computer, that's incredible, but you still can't push a rope. You need that computer to be available. I think the first chips were used in the calculators, but you can't push a rope. So even if that chip is available, you still need the computer to be operating and out there looking for a better chip. So the chemical industry is very conservative. The cycle time it takes for customers to bring their products to market when you're the Intel inside chip is very unpredictable. It's the least predictable part of the entire cycle. And getting that right is difficult. A lot of guesswork. And even if you have excellent, close, transparent, great, healthy relationships with big partners like Energizer, been around 100 years, right? You can still be very wrong on these things. Other things can happen beyond your control. Global economic meltdowns can happen. We saw a little bit of that this year. Well, we had a little bit of that in 2007-8. I don't blame bad timing, bad luck, global economic meltdowns beyond my control. Generally, things come down to, there's only two things that can fail: the people or the process, right? And so bad timing, bad luck, at the end of the day, you can blame those things. Sometimes that happens, but it's really also, let's face it, bad decisions. And if your title is CEO on the business card, you can say bad timing, bad luck. My partners died, people got divorced, some places in China borrowed a little bit of our technology, didn't want to pay for it. No offense. I love the Chinese culture. They're incredible at doing amazing things, but some of our technology was borrowed and not paid for. And so that happens. So I don't blame any of those things. A series of events happened that were really positive. We developed an incredible high rate, high performance, what's called a gas diffusion air electrode. Again, the very thin, paper thin layer, the active layer in the metal layer zinc air battery, 322% increase in power, a really big deal for about a 10% increase in cost. So for every dollar, you're going to pay now 110, but I'm going to give you 3.2x return on power. That's a pretty good trade-off. Generally, yes, we want to increase power and cut cost, but the metal can of the battery is number one in cost. The number two is the current collector. It's usually a nickel screen. It's very expensive. And we were number three. So we weren't the most expensive component, but it is expensive to make nanomaterials. So we had great performance, excellent advisors. Our consultant walked us into Energizer. They took another 18 months to validate. It didn't work at first. And I thought, is this BS? Is this not real? What did this guy, how did we miss this? And it turns out, even when you engage a partner early on, which our scientists did not want to do, our scientists and engineers in our laboratory said, it's only 50 or 60% of the way done. Don't show them our black box yet. They'll laugh. They won't believe us. They won't think we can achieve it. And I said, ultimately, it doesn't matter what we think we have. We might miss the window or opportunity for Energizer to truly engage and put skin in the game, intellectual and financial capital, and commit to this project if we don't do it now. If we get too far along, I later learned if we were 80 or 90% of the way done, they wouldn't have put the skin in the game to unwind it to get it perfect for their application. And at 60% of the way there, as long as we were super transparent about our strengths and weaknesses, what was working and what was not, and we were willing to be flexible and iterate and try new things in the lab based on their feedback, we learned that that's what the large companies wanted. And by the way, why would a 100-year-old American battery company even consider working with a high-risk small startup, right? They've been doing this for 100 years. What possibly could I do in the first few years of our existence that would change possibly the trajectory of one type of battery chemistry that's been around since, the 1800s, 200 years. Alexander Volta, right, out of Italy, I believe. Well, that happens.
How did this end?
A lot of these companies don't have inside R&D programs, right? They're really good at marketing, a little bit of R&D. And so we signed an agreement. We went out and raised capital. I got 11.4 million for that. 5-year exclusive. I couldn't do anything batteries. The global economic meltdown started happening first in the subprime mortgage market, as many may recall, in July of 2007. There might be some younger callers on the phone, but it hit the markets, the stock markets, in about the fall of 08. And the Energizer stock peaked at 119, ironically during our agreement, which I'd love to take credit for, but it wasn't all us. And it came down to, I think, the mid 50s. And Energizer ended up canceling the entire project, and that was crushing. This battery, they make about, I believe they make about 1 billion batteries a year, and 1.8 billion of them technically could use a technology like this. And we were hoping for a 30 to 50 million revenue stream from this one partnership. And we had about 5 or 6 others going. We had diversified and had been doing other things. We, during that time, also engaged with the large public top 50 global chemical company, and they led that investment round of $11 million. This massive credibility, Energizer relationship, battery, taking due diligence calls, huge company invested. We diversified. I put out some research, a call for research papers from universities saying, we will fund your research if you can demonstrate performance using our catalytic, conductive, magnetic, or antimicrobial materials. And we got all these great ideas submitted to us, and we funded those and filed patents and really diversified. But ultimately, we had to shift from the batteries because we got through 9, 10, 11, and 12. I funded us with some help through 13. And during that time frame, when we couldn't do anything batteries during that exclusive period, we started doing research on the chemical industry to improve the production yield of ammonia. In China and around the world, ammonia is used to make fertilizer, which is used to grow food to feed the planet. And we literally developed a catalyst to accelerate the production of ammonia at lower temperature and pressure to cut the cost. And it worked. And we went to China and demonstrated it. And George Ola said, well, I'm George Ola, big Hungarian accent, great guy. And he said, I was even screwed by the Chinese. Be very careful, but it's an excellent proving ground. It's where you go to demonstrate technologies, because the Chinese will let you demonstrate the technology. And we didn't take our reactors to China to teach them how we made the material. We took the end use product and said, let me demonstrate to you how this can work in your reactor. I won't blow it up. I'm using hyperbole, but we won't blow it up. We won't harm equipment. We won't hurt performance. And the performance worked. It was very compelling. So a lot of great things were happening during the time where Energizer was developing and putting their story together to launch the battery. They ultimately ended up canceling the program and not launching. Fortunately, we had diversified into other chemical opportunities. I had raised tens of millions of dollars. It was the spring of 2014. We just came out of the economic meltdown of several years here. And I met a group. They said, we love what you're doing. You've already spent $22 million getting it this far. How much do you need to get over the hump where this thing gets commercial? Again, and one of the other things I got wrong was, we did engage customers early on, but you've got to get that lead customer engaged and buying as soon as possible. You don't have a product until you get customers to buy more than one time. And we were definitely an R&D company with great technology looking for applications. Generally not how you want to start a company, but that's what we did. We had an R&D company with incredible capabilities that could change the world. And we were literally 10 years ahead of our time. Fast forward, we got, and I'll get to the end here. We In 2014, we ended up raising another $10 million for the Chinese focused ammonia production application. We scaled our process. We produced the material. We delivered it to China in several different trips. We got into the laboratories. We tested it commercially in a commercial environment. It worked. We were able to increase production of ammonia, lower the temperature and pressure, lower cost, increase output. That's a very big deal in the chemical market. The patent was issued. We signed a commercial agreement with the Swiss company, one of the world leaders in ammonia production and around the globe, based in Lugano, Switzerland. And we were off to the races. $10 million, scaled process, patents issued, agreements signed, and going off to raise capital to do a public offering. And it's a funny thing when you're doing research and development. People love the story and passion and the potential to change the world. But when the patents are issued and the technology works and it's time to convert that into buyers and revenue, we couldn't get the orders quick enough to maintain credibility with the bankers to fund the gap that it would take during the quiet period to file the S1 document with the SEC to get public in the US markets. And I couldn't fund it. And I just couldn't believe before my eyes, with patents issued and validations in China and the best people, smartest people in the world you could have, best partners, commercial agreements signed, that we couldn't bring in the capital. I had raised $35 million and I couldn't get $2 million more to fund through this gap. I ran out of capital. I ended up losing a lot.
And what was the day? What was the day like when you realized we're not going to be able to fund this gap and it's over?
It was it started to hit me in the December 2016, and it really hit me Q1 17. I started thinking, I've never, many times, not many, but maybe 3 or 4 times during the 15-year time frame, I thought this isn't going to work. And I was proven wrong, that the technology was scalable and automated and safe, and it worked. The end use applications were really compelling. I was proven wrong that the technology was needed and it really did valuable things. I thought, the customers aren't going to buy quick enough. They'll never pay this amount. And it turns out it was difficult to sell the technology. It was very, people were afraid of nano. And this wasn't nano going into we weren't technology with it. We weren't injecting it into the body. This is technology that, of course, is not cheap or easy to really compelling. And the Chinese said they wanted to invest and purchase, but I just could not get the purchase order. I finally did get one. It wasn't at a level that would be sustainable. If it cost me $1 to make pencils, I can't sell them at 50 cents a pop, a piece. So
what lessons did you learn from this whole experience?
It is something that is, it was an incredible experience and journey to build this technology company, spend millions of dollars on patents, get patents issued, and sign agreements with big companies, and everything was real and validated. And I learned that you can't push that rope I mentioned earlier. You can't make people buy, even if the performance is excellent. I learned that we should have engaged customers early on and got them to buy early on, and not just for the big win at the end. I learned that investors are very loyal if you're passionate and transparent. Even when you're failing, investors backing me, doing great things, but we just couldn't get, the people came in for 5 or 6 or 10 rounds of investments on this, and they could see the patent issued and the performance was working in China, and the agreement signed in Switzerland, and I couldn't get these partners to put in capital and fund the gap, and that was very frustrating. I realized that it was frustrating. It was really disheartening to know that hundreds of investors backed us with millions of dollars at the riskiest times, when we had nothing but a vision. And this is the crazy irony. It was easier to raise money on a passionate vision that we might and could change the world. But when the technology worked and the patents were issued and agreements were signed, people wanted to see the orders. And that's where the rubber meets the road. You don't have a business unless you start selling something. The purpose of a business generally around the world is not to make money. The purpose of the business is to create a customer. And if you do that well and you serve them well with a good product or service, then they will pay you an amount that is more than your cost. But the purpose of a business is to create a customer. And we failed massively at creating a sustainable customer base, which is the number one thing. We all know we need customers, we need revenue to live on, but we couldn't create the customer base fast enough, quick enough. And that was frustrating. It's definitely the thing that I recommend most is, do you have a customer? No, but we're close to showing them our widget, our box. It's almost done. And I said, go get one right away. It doesn't matter what you think you have. It only matters what the customer thinks you can solve for them. And they're willing to pay for it. So we lost, almost $35 million. I ended up selling the technology to a public company. I had an offer for about 10 million in equity. And they got on a due diligence call, and the Swiss partner said, yes, it's real, it's validated. We signed an agreement, we see the patents. We think it'll be a few more years to commercialize. Because again, the second biggest thing I got wrong is and it had been year 8 or 9 since we started developing it. And it can take 8 to 15 years to bring chemical technologies, new technologies to market, because they measure 10 times and cut once. So that's the second thing I got wrong. Even if it's working, they still won't force it into the pipeline. It still needs to be vetted over a several year period. I know I talked a lot.
I think if I summarize some of the things that I take away, I guess the biggest thing is the idea of runway. And you have what you're teaching all of us is that there's 2 aspects to runway. One aspect is, team and product development. And the other aspect is the sales portion of the runway. And I've never really thought about runway in that way, but you can say that the ideas and the execution and getting everything set is just a small part of the runway. The actual difficult part is to get people to pay.
That's the most critical thing. You can raise capital all day long on a passionate story and a vision. You better really try to deliver on that value, right? There's a lot of people that are in deep trouble for raising money on a story and not even trying to execute. We were so proud to deliver, amazing people and products, and we generated a few $1 million in aggregate revenue over the time frame, a couple $1 million in R&D, small product sales, but it only matters what the customer is willing to pay and how quickly will they start paying you for it. If it's 15 years to bring it to market and you're in year 8 and your patents are done, your agreements are signed, and your technology works, it's, really hard to fund that gap, because the time horizon for venture capital and or public equity markets, when you get public, you have a couple years maximum to deliver a revenue.
You'd be better off selling your company or selling a technology at that point. So based upon what you learned from this story and what you continue to learn, what one action, I'm going to hold you to one, would you recommend our listeners take to avoid suffering the same fate?
That is such a good question. It's difficult because the one time when I wanted to walk away, I thought, you know what? There's probably someone better than me out there to take it to the next level. And as soon as I wanted to depart that one time, in a 3-month period, in 90 days, when I was seriously contemplating leaving, the patent was issued, the agreements were signed, and the validation was achieved. And those are highly misleading, but incredible milestones. You're thinking, we're almost there. This journey is going to deliver a reward, not just monetarily, but for the world. And so it's difficult. most people wouldn't leave when those milestones are happening. If I could go back and change one thing, I don't regret much, but I may have, and this is risky, but a mentor of mine said, Kevin, there's a window happening in nanotechnology right now in 2003, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There was a window.
Yep.
And a friend of mine took his company public on a story. He had done this before, so he knew how to do it. He did a reverse merge, took it public. And like a biotech company, many, many biotech companies in the States, United States, get public through a reverse merge. And they're the anomaly. They can be public without a revenue stream, a predictable revenue stream, or fundamentals, because they trade on patent news, milestone news, partner payments, milestone payments, or FDA clinical trials, because people are betting that they're going to cure cancer, and they'll bet for 5 or 10 years, and it takes $1 billion, and many don't work out. Those are the anomaly. The other time, there's only 2 times when you raise money, when you have to and you can. And I had a conservative board that said, we can't get public. We don't have revenues. We're not sustainable. It's not fundamentally sustainable yet. But a good friend of mine took his story public. And I said, Bruce, you don't have people, products, revenues, patents, or science, not even any reactors.
Cash now.
He raised money on a story, took it public, raised a ton of cash, created this nanotechnology company, a shell, went out and hired people, smart people. And with that story and capital, I think he went through a couple management teams, went out and attempted to build a nanotechnology company, iterated many times, ended up doing therapeutic nanotechnology, biology related company, ended up raising about $400 million to date, and ultimately took the stock from 23 cents. I think it's at $80 today. And I'm not saying that would have been my story, but here's the lesson I learned. Had I taken the company public, and again, we had people, products, patents, scientists, reactors, an incredible facility with full transparency, engaged customers and partners like Northrop and Energizer, big names you've heard of. Had we taken that story public then with our publicly announced zinc air battery breakthrough, and Energizer and the top 50 global chemical company taking due diligence calls that it was all real, I think we could have achieved a several $100 million market cap during that hot period, that window of getting public. And I would have been able to bring in secondary offering capital of $50 to $100 million. And I would have gone out there and bought into a biotechnology story, or bought a company with revenues to augment or offset or de-risk our portfolio.
All right. So either raise a huge amount of capital or get a customer paying now, but you can't do neither.
Right.
Right,
But I don't.
Question. What's your number one goal for the next 12 months?
I have, 2. One thing that's interesting on the final story of QSI, Quantum Sphere is the company name. I wouldn't even go back and say I wouldn't have developed these technologies. 4 times in the last 3 years, there were breakthrough press releases announced by companies that had announced breakthroughs leveraging the exact same technology we announced 8, 10, and 12 years ago. No joke. So we were 10 to 12 years too early. And I write the author every time and say, that's incredible. Did you see the news on this company 8, 10, and 12 years ago? Not to say, hey, we did it first, but it's out there and I believe it and I saw it and we have patents on that and I'm all for that. But personally and professionally, I'm excited about my current endeavor, which is an indoor air quality IoT sensor and monitoring platform. I think it's really important to monitor and track and publicly share the quality of air we breathe indoors, because 90% of our time in life is spent indoors, and the indoor air quality is 3 to 5x more pollutant than outdoors. So I'm really passionate about professionally launching our technology and platform. in the next 3 months timeframe. I'm excited about that. And I'm also launched a small business, personally, a fun thing with my son, to motivate kids, students, and athletes, young and old, students, athletes, and entrepreneurs around the world to just hustle with grit, which in our family means never, ever give up. And so launching Hustle with Grit with him and launching this air quality sensor is sort of my new endeavor, and taking everything we learned about being early. Now I think people more than ever want to know the quality of air we're breathing indoors.
Yep.
It used to be a nice to have. Now I think it's more of a have to have. And I think that timing and hard work is really important. And I feel like I have better timing on this one. I don't want to be an innovator 10 years early.
All right, listeners, there you have it. Another story of loss to keep you winning. Remember to go to myworstinvestmentever.com to claim your discount on the one course that excites you the most. As we conclude, I want to thank you very much, Kevin, for coming on the show. And on behalf of A Stotts Academy, I hereby award you alumni status for turning your worst investment ever into your best teaching moment. Do you have any parting words for the audience?
I would say have fun, fail quickly and often, fail quickly and often. Engage that customer, get feedback from that customer, and it doesn't matter what you or your science team think. Just innovate and iterate quickly based on customer feedback. That'll save you so much time and headache. I got that wrong. It cost us $35 million. And be passionate about your potential.
Great. Well, that's a wrap on another great story to help us create, grow, and most importantly, protect our wealth. Fellow risk takers, this is your worst podcast host, Andrew Stott, saying, I'll see you on the upside.